Their shit. I built a company from nothing, from bankruptcy. When people around me told me every step of the way, this will not work. At the height of thinking, we were turning over $3.5 million. We were bringing in some of the greatest minds in the world, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins, Michio, Kaku, Brian Greene, to Australia and New Zealand, audiences who've never seen anything like it. Then I lost it all. Not because the business failed, not because the market dried up, not because I ran out of ideas. I lost it because of two decisions I made when I was riding the highest I've ever been. Two decisions that will spend the rest of my career making sure the next generation of entrepreneurs never repeat. So, here's that story. Let me take you back to 2009, 2010. I've been working in the Australian music industry and event industry for a few years by then. Nightclub management, music tours, some of my own, few for my partners, few for the largest promoters in the country. And on paper, it all looked fantastic. Sold out shows, after parties, after party to the after party. But I was exhausted. And I don't mean physically. I remember standing side a stage at a stadium show in Sydney. T-Pain was headlining. The crowd was losing their minds. And I looked at all of it and I felt nothing. Not bored, exactly. More like, what's the point of all of this? I wasn't judging the audience. Music events matter, entertainment matters. But at the point of my life, I felt like I was not adding anything of real value to the world. I was running on a treadmill that was going nowhere I actually wanted to go. And I've been reading a lot, science, philosophy, cosmology, the kind of ideas that kept me up at night because I couldn't stop thinking about them. And one day, I thought I landed on an idea that changed everything. What if I took the model of a music festival, the scale, the energy, the production, and replaced it with ideas instead of music? What if I built an event that was intellectually stimulating the way a great concert is emotionally stimulating? That was a seed. I told two of my friends, Sean and James, about the idea.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sean. I'm one of the organisers of Think Inc.
Hi, I'm James. I'm marketing director for Think Inc.
Why did you put your hand up to be the marketing manager of this project?
Because I thought it was going to fail if I wasn't involved.
And they were in. Together, we built a concept that was genuinely ambitious.
This whole team thinks we want to do things that others just think impossible. So look, this is our first year. We've got some incredible speakers already. It is going to get better. We try to get God.
Slam poetry, stand-up comedy, debates, panels, keynotes from the world's foremost public intellectuals. We wanted Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Maher, Brian Cox, the best minds on the planet on one stage in Australia. Once I had the idea, I decided to go to all these established organizations, people who have been running sort of intellectual events for years. And every single one of them told me that we've been trying to do this for years, if not decades. It's not possible to get some of these bigger names to come all the way to Australia. No, not going to work. Look, I was stubborn. I told every one of them, watch me, we're going to do this. And we got to work. I reached out to Neil deGrasse Tyson, fully expecting him to say no. And he came back and said, hey, if you can make the numbers work, I'd love to come. Same response from Michael Shermer and a whole bunch of other people we reached out to. Few said no, few were skeptical, but most said yes. We put on that first event and a piece of programming that was extraordinary. The content was everything we hoped it would be. People walked out of that room genuinely moved. But financially, we were decimated. We needed 3,000 tickets to break even. We sold 1,700. And then, as if the financial collapse wasn't enough, I received a letter from the immigration office, basically saying, your visa's expired. You got 28 days to leave. In a space of few weeks, I lost my business, declared bankruptcy, and lost the place I had called home for 12 years. I left Australia. I eventually came back. New visa, new city, and I was not starting from zero this time. Zero would have been a luxury. I was starting from minus. No money, no credit history, no company, just the wreckage of everything I built. And this idea that refused to let me go. I was working for peanuts for a successful large-scale promoter. He had the cars, the lifestyle, the industry reputation, and then I told him I wanted to do this public intellectual touring thing. And he looked at me and said, dude, no one's going to pay money to hear someone speak on stage. It's a pipe dream. Forget it. I just couldn't forget it. I did some maths and I was like, I need $25,000 to make this work. So I decided to ask anyone who would listen to me. I went to a very successful friend of mine. I pitched him the idea. He listened. He smiled and he said, mate, you're in your 30s. You don't have 25 grand saved? Why would I give you money? That question hit me harder than anything had in years. Because he wasn't wrong. I had nothing, worse than nothing. On paper, I was the last person anyone should lend any money to. But I believed, I knew this was going to work. A few days later, working at a nightclub, I met this gentleman with a kind of surname that, let's just say, if I don't repay the money, the consequences would have extended well beyond financial, if you know what I mean. He gave me the $25,000, 50% return on investment guaranteed. Plus, if the tour makes a profit, 50% of that given to him. Handshake deal. I tell this story to young entrepreneurs and watch their jaws drop. I would never advise anyone to do what I did. I was desperate, I was certain, and I was foolish. And sometimes certainty is the only currency you have left. But if you ever are in that position, please think 5 times before you do that. The speaker I chose for the first tour, where I bet everything on, was Dr. Michio Kaku, the co-founder of String Field Theory, best-selling author, one of the most electrifying science communicators alive. I had been consuming his work for years and I was absolutely convinced there were thousands of Australians and New Zealanders who would pay to sit in a room to hear the man speak. I used the $25,000 to place deposits for venues in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and I paid Dr. Kaku a small deposit. And just like that, 25 grand was gone. No money left for promotion, no money left for anything really. So I went to every single university in the country, sent hundreds of sponsorship proposals, secured a couple of meaningful responses, ended up getting what I needed. Also ended up selling the Brisbane leg to a business associate for a small upfront sum. Built a crappy WordPress website myself and started selling tickets directly, using the incoming ticket revenue to fund the operation as we went. As you know how dangerous that is, watch my Neo video if you want to see how that could badly go wrong. And then I sent an email and SMS blast to every contact I had built over years running hip-hop nights and nightclubs. Michio Kaku is coming to Australia. Slowly but surely, tickets started moving. Every dollar that came in, I put it straight back to advertising, more and more. And by the time the tour happened, Sydney had 2,000 plus people, Melbourne 2,500 people, Brisbane another 1,500. All 3 cities sold out. That sold out tour, the one that built on a handshake deal, a crappy website, and the absolute refuse to quit, gave me the financial foundation to build Thinking, the world's first intellectual touring company. I paid my investor back his $25,000 and then handed him 50 grand on top of that. 300% return in under 6 months. I mean, he was ready to give me more money. I said, thank you. I do not need it anymore. I got it from here. And then I went after everybody. I reached out to Bill Nye, James Randi, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins, you name it. Every public intellectual who had shaped the way I saw the world, I was going to bring them to Australia and New Zealand. In a few years, we went from nothing to a company that turned over $3.5 million a year. I still look back at that period and think, how did that actually happen? I wasn't really ready. Now, I have been debating whether to tell the next part of the story. The reason I'm telling it, the only reason, is this. If even one person watching this video avoids making the same mistake I made, it's worth whatever discomfort it cost me to say this out loud. I should also be clear. There are legal complexities here, and I mean, I can't tell every detail, but I can tell you enough. As I was starting up thinking, just before the success of Michio Kaku, I met somebody and fell in love. She was there during the hardest years, when I was starting from minus, when nobody believed in the idea, when I was cash flowing events on a shoestring budget and holding the whole thing together with sheer stubbornness. She was there. In every sense of the phrase, she was my ride or die. And in my excitement, in my desire to make that commitment real, I made two decisions that I now know were the worst of my professional life. Decision one. I made my life partner my business partner. I gave her 50% of thinking, the company I had built from bankruptcy, with my own hands. From a crappy WordPress website to handshake deals in a nightclub, I gave away half of everything I fought to build. Decision two. I put my immigration status inside the relationship. I had a business visa. She pointed out correctly the fastest way to get a permanent residency was a spousal visa. So I did it. Not only did I give her half of my company, I gave her half of my legal right to be in the country that I called home. Let me be absolutely clear about what I've done. My professional future, my right to stay in the country, both of them were now clearly, entirely dependent on one personal relationship remaining intact. Now, the first few years after the Michio Kaku tour were great, remarkable. Thinking was growing. Life felt good. It felt right. And then the relationship began to fracture. And as it fractured, the full weight of what I have done started to become clear. When the separation became unavoidable, I went to her and said, look, we need to untangle this. The relationship is over. We need to go our separate ways. We need to separate the business. And then came the moment I still find difficult to talk about. She said, you have two choices. You can have thinking, or you can stay in Australia. You cannot have both. I was devastated. Thinking was mine. I had conceived it. I had built it. I had nearly destroyed my life twice over making it real. And now I had been told that I have to choose. I got lawyers involved. We went through a prolonged legal process and we eventually reached an agreement. She would take thinking. But in exchange, we would do one final tour together and split the profit 50-50. That would be my exit. The final tour was Professor Richard Dawkins in 2018. The tour went well. Actually, it went phenomenally well. I put everything to that. Then I handed over in writing thinking to her. And then came the day to settle the finances. She sent me the official accounts. The numbers were wrong. Not a rounding error, not an accounting discrepancy. The figures were presented by approximately 1/8 of the actual revenue. I ran the tour. I had the ticket numbers. These were not the ticket numbers. I said, these are inaccurate. She said, nope, those are the numbers. I had to take legal action again. And then, while the whole process was still live, I got a phone call. Hey, this is the immigration office. We received a notification. We're canceling your visa. She had called the immigration office on me. After taking the company after the financial dispute over the Dawkins tour, she had also tried to remove my right to be in the country. This was a new law. I did not think that was possible. The good news is the system isn't entirely broken. I managed to secure a visa very quickly. I set up a whole new company. This is 42, a full-service events agency that now operates in multiple countries. And then about 6 months ago, before I record this video, I did something that felt deeply, personally meaningful. I launched Thinkable. Thinkable is the continuation of what thinking was always meant to be. World-class intellectual events for Australia and global audiences. We've already completed 2 tours. Third one is on sale now. 4th one to be announced. We've got one hell of a 2026 coming up. We're expecting to serve probably 25,000 people this year. Thinking, for the record, has gone bankrupt. It no longer exists. I don't say this with any satisfaction, but the idea was always bigger than the company. And the idea survived everything. If you look at the Australian events calendar, speaking events plays a huge role. So, what is the actual lesson here? You can build something extraordinary from nothing, from bankruptcy, from a handshake deal with someone whose surname you probably shouldn't have shaken hands with. You can back yourself when the whole industry is telling you you're wrong. I did all of that. But none of this protects you if you don't build correctly. If you don't separate personal from professional, not emotionally, you'll always bring your whole self to your work, right? But structurally, legally, contractually, never give equity in something you built to someone who hasn't built it with you. Never put your legal status in any country in the hands of a single personal relationship. I learned both of these lessons at the cost of the company I loved. Years of legal battle and near loss of my home. You don't have to learn them that way. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. The event industry is full of stories that never get told publicly. The real ones, the ones behind the press releases and the sold out tour announcement. I'm going to keep telling them. See you in the next one.